It was the kind of rainy evening that made the world feel smaller and lonelier. The street lights glowed softly through the falling rain, and the empty sidewalks reflected the quiet sadness of the city. Most people hurried home, eager to escape the cold. But sometimes, on nights like this, life quietly arranged moments that could change everything. Daniel Carter had spent most of his life believing that hard work would eventually bring happiness. Yet as he sat alone on a worn park bench outside the small train station, that belief felt fragile. His coat was thin, his shoes were soaked, and the envelope in his pocket carried news that had crushed the last pieces of hope he had been holding onto. Just 3 months earlier, Daniel had lost his job when the factory he worked at for nearly 15 years shut down overnight. The company promised support, but the promises never arrived. Bills piled up, his savings vanished, and the apartment he once proudly called home had become a memory. Still, Daniel carried something that many people in his situation didn't: a quiet dignity. Even in the middle of his struggle, he refused to believe the world had completely turned its back on him. Across the street, a small cafe glowed warmly against the cold night. The soft yellow light spilling from its windows looked almost like an invitation. Daniel hesitated, checking the few coins in his pocket. It wasn't enough for a meal, but maybe just enough for a cup of coffee. Inside the cafe, the warmth wrapped around him instantly. The scent of fresh bread and roasted coffee beans filled the air. People chatted quietly at their tables, unaware of the silent battles others around them were fighting. Behind the counter worked a young woman named Emily. She had noticed Daniel the moment he walked in, not because of his worn coat, but because of the tired look in his eyes. It was a look she recognized well. Emily's father had struggled for years after losing his own job when she was younger. She remembered the nights when he would pretend he wasn't hungry so she could eat. Those memories had shaped the person she had become, someone who paid attention when others didn't. Daniel ordered the cheapest coffee on the menu and sat quietly in the corner. For a long time he simply stared out the window at the rain. Emily watched him from behind the counter. Something told her this man needed more than just coffee. A few minutes later she walked over and gently placed a warm sandwich on the table beside him. Daniel looked up in surprise, immediately reaching for his pocket. Emily simply smiled and told him it was an extra order that someone forgot to pick up. No charge. For a moment Daniel hesitated, pride fighting with hunger. But the kindness in her eyes made it easier to accept. That small act of generosity changed the atmosphere of the entire night. For the first time in weeks, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, a small spark of hope. As he ate, the warmth slowly returned to his body. The rain outside continued to fall, but somehow it didn't feel as heavy anymore. Emily returned to the counter, but she kept glancing toward the quiet man in the corner. She wondered what story had brought him there. What neither of them realized was that the simple moment unfolding inside that small cafe would eventually change both of their lives in ways neither could imagine. The following morning, Daniel returned to the cafe, not because he expected more kindness, but because it had been the first place in a long time where he didn't feel invisible. Emily greeted him with the same warm smile. Over the next few days, a quiet routine formed. Daniel would stop by for coffee, and sometimes Emily would sit for a few minutes during her break. Slowly, the story of Daniel's life began to unfold. He spoke about the years he spent working at the factory, the pride he felt supporting his family, and the heartbreak of watching everything disappear so quickly. But he never spoke with bitterness. Instead, he carried a calm acceptance that life sometimes tested people in unexpected ways. Emily listened carefully. And the more she listened, the more she realized that Daniel wasn't just someone who had lost his job, he was someone who had lost his sense of purpose. One afternoon, something unexpected happened. A man in an expensive suit entered the cafe. He was a regular customer, a business owner named Michael Grant. He had built several successful companies in the city and was known for his sharp mind and demanding standards. As Michael waited for his coffee, he noticed Daniel quietly helping an elderly woman near the door who had dropped her bag of groceries. Daniel carefully picked up each item and walked her safely outside to a taxi waiting in the rain. Michael watched the entire moment. There was something about the way Daniel moved, calm, respectful, and genuine, that caught his attention. When Daniel returned inside, Michael approached him and struck up a conversation. At first it was casual. But as they spoke, Michael quickly realized Daniel possessed something rare: integrity, patience, and the ability to treat people with kindness even when life had treated him unfairly. Michael believed businesses needed more than just smart people. They needed good people. And so, after a long conversation, Michael made an unexpected offer. He invited Daniel to come work at one of his warehouses, helping manage operations. It wasn't a glamorous position, but it was a fresh start. Daniel was stunned. Only days earlier he had been sitting on a rainy bench believing the world had forgotten him. Now someone was giving him a chance. Months passed. Daniel threw himself into the work with determination. He arrived early, stayed late, and treated every employee with the same respect he showed that elderly woman outside the cafe. Slowly, the warehouse transformed. Morale improved. Efficiency increased. Workers who once dreaded their shifts began taking pride in their jobs. Michael noticed. Within a year, Daniel had been promoted twice. But no matter how much his life improved, he never forgot the small cafe or the young woman who had shown kindness when he needed it most. One evening, nearly a year after that rainy night, Daniel returned to the cafe. Emily was still working behind the counter. But this time Daniel walked in wearing a clean suit and carrying a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. Emily barely recognized him at first. When she did, her eyes filled with surprise and happiness. Daniel told her everything, the job, the opportunity, the way his life had slowly come back together. But he made one thing very clear. None of it would have happened if she hadn't offered that simple sandwich on a rainy night. That small act of kindness had reminded him that the world still held good people. And sometimes, that reminder is all someone needs to keep going. Before leaving, Daniel placed an envelope on the counter. Inside was something Emily never expected, enough money to help her finally start the small bakery she had always dreamed about opening. Daniel explained that it wasn't charity. It was gratitude. Because kindness has a strange way of coming full circle. A year later, Emily's bakery opened just a few blocks away. And on the first morning the doors opened, the very first customer standing outside in line was Daniel. Life doesn't always change through grand gestures or dramatic moments. Sometimes it changes through the smallest acts, a warm meal, a kind smile, a moment when someone chooses compassion instead of indifference. So if this story touched your heart, remember this: your kindness may be the light someone needs during their darkest moment. And if you believe in stories that remind us how powerful simple kindness can be, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories that restore faith in humanity. Because somewhere out there tonight, one small act of kindness might be preparing to change a life forever.